Hello everyone and welcome to episode 4 of our grain to glass solution from Bottle ERP. In this session we're going to go through samples, sample testing, samples in stock, anything around samples and how our system handles it. My name is Imad Malik from Catalyst ERP. I'm going to dive straight in. So the first thing we're going to look at is actually creating samples, managing the stock of samples and then going from there. So we can create samples in various different ways. We can create them through NetSuite, we can have them as planned, scheduled, get the customer to request it for private cash sales in theory. Depending on how we've done it, we can see that information within the system. We can also do this as an ad hoc basis using our WMS solution, our warehouse management solution. If I go into there and look at a sample record, I have the ability to see anything that might be planned, as I said, from private cash sales, planned scheduled ones, etc. Or I have the ability to generate new samples depending on the permissions I have. I will then scan the vessel that I'm taking the sample from. It's going to ask me a couple of questions around how many samples and what's the quantity of each sample. And every single stage is going to ask for verification if I'm sure, and it's easier to deal with issues before if someone's made a simple mistake. But because we're working in real time between NetSuite, Bottle ERP, and WMS the handheld solution, that information has gone back into NetSuite automatically, and I can now look at that sample itself. So if we go back in, and I go to the list of samples, we should be able to see my sample at the top. And we can see that all the key information around the location, the item, the batch itself, the vessel that we were scanning, the information about the vessel have all automatically been brought through, along with the sample and the quantity of the sample. At the top, we can see the status of the progress. Has it completed? Has it generated everything? It needs to do automatically in the background as the user has generated the sample. In this case, it has. I can then print off the labels for each sample. In this case, only 2 samples, so only 2 labels needed. And for each one, it's giving me a unique barcode in a QR code format that allows me to then trace this, referencing the original item, the original batch, and then the new batch that's also being generated as well, giving me that full traceability. And that's how you can generate them. I could have pre-created my sample record and got it completed from the handheld. I can do the entire process in Bottle ERP and NetSuite if I want to, or do a mix as we saw there. Depending on how you go, you'll still end up with samples in stock that you can then track. This is an example report of samples that we've got in the system that we can track, and this is just a basic report that shows us the key information about what item it was from, what was the batch, how much was taken out, what was the APV at that point, what was the AYS, and we have then the ability to select additional filters that allows us to filter that information down depending on the samples we've got. And at any point, I can see this information because it's live, because everybody is working in the same system. We can take that a step further, and if you do any sort of sample testing, you can do that as well. So again, generating that through NetSuite, through WMS I have the ability to generate sample records as required. And I can do this through WMS or I can do this through the handheld, as I said, through NetSuite. If we go back to WMS and go to task management, go to sample testing, we can again now select the batch that we want to try against. So in this case, I'm just going to select a batch, and then I've got a couple of tests that I'm tracking against. And these are all configurable depending on what sort of tests you want, what sort of information you want to track, what sort of things do you want to trace and report on as well. So as I said, this is just some examples that have been created. This then, again, gives me confirmation of, are we sure that this is what we want to do? Yes, we are. That sample test is completed. Going back into the system, if I refresh my list, I can then open that up and I can see what's happened, what was the product, what was the batch, what samples were taken, what sort of information was tracked, and who did it as well. And at every single stage throughout the sample process, the sample testing process, the system's automatically going to generate history records, so we can trace the history of that liquid over its entire lifetime as it goes as well. So those are some of the key elements that you have as part of samples within the system. We have to track the samples in stock, do sample testing, do various reporting on the samples, where they came from and who they came from as well. But that concludes our session around samples within Bottle ERP. Thank you very much for your time.